Thank you. Um, all right. Because of the disruptions that we've had, I've made it so that people can't unmute themselves. Please raise your hand or you can send a chat if you have a question or something that you would like to say. Sorry for that, but I think you all remember that very obnoxious disruption that we had. The other thing is, although today we're starting at 7:30 because of an earlier program, um, from now on, these particular webinars through the end of the year are going to be starting at 7 p.m. GMT. So that's half an hour earlier than it started today, but it's half an hour later than we're used to. So just be aware of that, okay? Over to you, Duane.
Excellent, BL. Thank you for that notice. I would like to extend my appreciation to the Moya University for the opportunity for once again to share with these wonderful teachings that we have been given. And special mention to our techie bros and sisters here, Mike, BL, Rose, and others. And of course, all of you who have taken your valuable time to participate in this group integration process. I'd like to make a few brief preliminary statements before we jump in. We are in a great transitional period in which we're going to see the old order collapse and slowly disintegrate. This is not going to be a fun thing to endure or to go through, but it's a necessary one. And the impact of the masters externalizing and the power of 2025 Shambhala demands it. And we're not going to see radical change just in the religious, the political, or even the social areas. We're going to see a lot of upheavals in the economic paradigm that we've been laboring under for literally centuries. And what you see taking place out there on your TVs and your monitors and your news broadcasts are just trying to catch up with more powerful forces that stand behind it. And the question to the disciple, of course, is, well, what can we do? And I know all of you who are here have many, many groups you work with and service projects you're involved in. But I would say, to boil it all down, our stability, our peace of mind is relative to how we can develop the soul and spiritual impersonality. And that's done by clinging to what is called the great law, the principles and laws that the masters have laid out for us and eloquently shared. So that is going to be your refuge. And if your 401k is disappearing and your stocks are taking a dive, that is an unfortunate thing, but it's the wider perspective and the understanding that there has to be a tremendous amount of pressure to blow away the old paradigms that are no longer useful. And they're not going to give up easily, these old thought forms and ways of doing things. Okay, so I just wanted to make those few concepts available. And one other sort of footnote. When we explore the symbols that we're going to review and participate in the animations, we have to keep in mind that it's our imagination that brings them to life. Yes, you can passively watch them and they can impress you because they are powerful. But more than that, as HP once shared with her students, when you study occult symbols, you have to imagine you're going to the center of that symbol and you're looking back or looking out of it, because symbols have multiple levels, and depending on your depth of penetration will relate directly to what is revealed. So again, the power of the imagination is unlimited. It has multiple levels, and even Shambhala can be approached by certain visualizations, which many students often feel fall strictly under a second ray sort of constitution, because we know visualization happens through the astral body, the mind, and then eventually into the Buddhic and up the ladder of evolution. So keep that in mind as we work through this presentation. And what we're going to do today is we're going to explore the three crosses. And we have some wonderful animations. And I've put up here, I think I got this from Philip Lindsay and I expanded on it slightly. These are the three crosses, and the best presentation to date that I have seen on the three crosses was done by Francis Donald quite a few years back at one of the conferences. And if you want to further expand your understanding of the three crosses, I highly recommend you go back into the archives or even ask Francis, because he did a marvelous, marvelous job. So we know the mutable cross, done up in green because it's sort of a third ray activity or energy, is what takes us onto the path of initiation and trains us to get ready to, once the personality is integrated, onto the fixed cross, which is where the personality, you might say, becomes crucified, because we're now working with soul energies. And this is where the higher initiations begin, but it's mainly a soul divine egoic lotus unfoldment. And you have the astrological influences that are dominant during these stages. And also keep in mind that these stages overlap. And that was one of the wonderful insights that Francis shared with the U.S. the Moya group, was how that they can be interconnected and overlap. So we can't be too rigid, and hence why we have quite a few more visualizations or animations in this presentation, because all these are shifting changes into higher and higher levels where more powerful forces, they use the lesser ones as like a base or a foundation. So at some point, if you can see these three crosses operating at the same time, you have really arrived with your ability to visualize. And then, of course, we have the cardinal cross, and this is when you really are opening up to these higher initiations, perhaps started at the third and then becoming dominant. And again, with the different astrological influences. Okay, excellent.
Duane,
Yes,
can I just emphasize a point here?
you sure
When
can.
when we talk about the three crosses, we have to keep in mind that there's two different interpretations of them. One is what Duane was just talking about, and that's uh, the evolution of man and the purpose of the crosses in that evolution. The second is the astrological meaning of the crosses as part of our charts. And just because we might have a predominance of cardinal signs in our chart, it doesn't necessarily mean that that will indicate our position on the path relative to the the evolution of man. Okay, I just wanted to point that out.
Excellent. That is a very important consideration because as we explore this subject, we're going to find that crosses exist not only on these three departments, but as BL has pointed out, they can be uh, on they can be cosmic crosses, solar crosses, personality crosses. Every center is a multiple of certain crosses, and we'll explore that as we move along. Would anybody like to read this quote by DK from Treatise in White Magic, which sort of
I can
helps
read it.
us? Thank you.
Energy is a life fluid circulating throughout the entire body of the Logos and vivifying, therefore, even the tiniest atom in that whole. It is valuable to endeavor to grasp the picture and to vision the wonder what is transpiring.
I love that word, to vision the wonder. The occult path is complete with endless volumes of minutia, and it's very valuable information. But until you can really activate the higher aspect of the visualization of the astral body that will ultimately take you to the Buddhic plane, just as the lower mind takes us to the higher mind and then the mind of God, as Michael Robbins would say, it's a wonder. We have to become like little children. And how does that biblical metaphor go? Be ye as wise as serpents and gentle as doves. That is a beautiful, beautiful mantra for what each disciple is demanded of. To always keep that sense of wonder. And an overdevelopment of the lower mind can cloud that. So I love this picture because it shows the mutable cross, and it shows the center point of divinity. It could be Fohat, galvanizing this sort of active, intelligent energy into a wonder, a glorious consummation and wonder. Now, on this next image, it's also an equal arm cross. Now, sometimes the mutable cross can be positioned in slightly different ways, but it's basically a fiery cross that rotates, and depending on your level of development of that particular cross will depend on its vibrancy, its potency, its occult fire. And this relates to the unfoldment of the petals of the egoic lotus. Now, this is also a glyph or a symbol of the Master R. And I have a strong intuitive sense from working with this group for quite a while that many of you are not just working with DK, but obviously are working with not only KH or Christ or any of the other masters, Master R, because Master R has taken over the responsibility of the Maha Chohan, that great third ray department, and it's about grounding. It's about bringing into manifestation all these high ideals, all these austere metaphysical concepts into something tangible. And what I've done is I've taken this symbol of the Master R, and this is only one of his or hers. I made it electric because this is the base of the spine center. And right now we are being stimulated from cosmic levels by Draco, cosmic Kundalini. And I've mentioned this before, but it's worth a quick repeat. This cosmic Kundalini will stimulate the centers and all those disciples who are coming up for the third initiation or are undergoing the third initiation. Now, it also stimulates those undergoing the first and second initiations, but according to DK, this period right now is the same as the Buddha when it was termed or designated the gathering in of the Arhats. So as the planet goes through these huge cycles and humanity goes through these cycles, opportunity arises. Now, there are minor opportunities which are always available, and there are major ones in which, as my grandma used to say, you can attach your wagon to a star. Beautiful metaphor when she was trying to get me out of the dumps of my teenage years and to look forward, to look and anticipate great things coming, because they are. I just couldn't really understand it at that time. And her simple wisdom was just way beyond me. So this seventh ray energy will cause tremendous upheavals. Because there's an intimate relationship between the first ray and the seventh ray. In fact, some people say that there is only the first ray, and when you separate it down to its lowest manifestation, you have the seventh ray. And all initiation is the elevation, purification of all the material forces we're born with and into back to its source, plus the wisdom and the light and the sound and the color that we accrued through all those many lifetimes. So again, we don't deliberately focus on the base of the spine unless the master has given us a meditation, but it will be stimulated and it will rise of its own accord when you reach a certain point of development. And you don't want to repress that, nor do you want to overly activate it. And when this energy hits humanity, the elemental kingdoms run riot. This is almost a direct quote from the Tibetan. And this is why you're seeing, not just through the sacral center, but on the lower self will, that the base of the spine in its lowest form activates, sort of like an Aries Leo, sort of, I'm going to do it my way, or everybody's got to take the highway. And it's something that we have to live through and keep steady with our teachings, our meditations, our service. This is the test. It's not just when you're in your group grooving on high energy, but when you're, and I'm choosing my words wisely here, when you're expelled and there's a hiatus between you and your group link, and you got to deal with all the insanity that's taking place around you. Here's another beautiful depiction of the mutable cross. Would anybody else like to read this one? Okay, I can read this one. The holy temple of divine justice. They enter, pass to the center of the sphere, and there set up the holy temple of divine justice, sending out to the four quadrants of the circle the four Maharajis, their representatives. So is the equal armed cross formed, and all of the wheels of energy set in motion. So if you were looking at the crown center and we were describing like from the cardinal cross angle, you'd see a whole different approach. But what we're doing here is we're starting with the lowest denominator and trying to see how this fits in with our development and with the development of humanity. And for further explanation of that cross, I've added here this quote by the Tibetan. There is a group of four beings who are the representatives upon the planet of the four Maharajis, or the four lords of karma in the solar system, who are specially concerned with the evolution at the present time of the human kingdom. These four are connected with the distribution of karma or human destiny as it affects individuals, and through the individuals, the groups. 2, the care and tabulation of the Akashic records. They are concerned with the halls of records, or with keeping of the books, as it is called in the Christian Bible. They are known in the Christian world as the recording angels. 3, the participation in solar councils. They alone have the right during the world cycle to pass beyond the periphery of the planetary scheme and participate in the councils of the solar logos. Thus, they are literally planetary mediators, representing our planetary logos and all that concerns him in the greater scheme of which he is but a part. Cooperating with these karmic lords are the large group of initiates and devas who occupy themselves with the right adjustment of world karma, racial karma, national karma, group karma, individual karma, and who are responsible to the planetary logos for the correct manipulation of those forces in building agencies which bring in the right egos on the different rays at the correct times and seasons. Now, I understand that's sort of a lot to assimilate all at once, and it's quite technical, but it's important to see that the mutable cross in its multiple levels of expression are very, very important. And they occupy in the higher levels, as BL pointed out earlier, very important positions with our planetary logos. Okay,
Hey,
any questions
Duane,
up to this point? Yes.
we got a couple of people who said they could read. I was actually trying to get a reader for you a minute ago and I forgot to unmute myself, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
Um,
that's fine. Yeah, I'd love to
but
have somebody participate.
Okay, and then let me see here. Uh, Heidi says, isn't that what the seventh ray is presenting to humanity at this time?
Yes, and the Tibetan also says that what is going to take place after 2025 is not only the powerful impact of the seventh ray, but a new influence that includes all seven of the rays. And I find that fascinating because this is a time of revolution that's right on the physical plane. It's not taking place up there in the higher regions only. Thank you for that comment. Okay, a reader for this next quote.
Okay, Maria, can you read that for us, please? Hold on a minute. Let me unmute you. Let me find you. There you are. Okay, there you go. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Yes, now I could. Just a second. Through occult friction, the cross scintillates and motion originates. Another summation of the entire process may be found in the lines from stanzas for disciples, which I gave out some time ago, and which will also be found elsewhere in this volume. In the cross is hidden light. The vertical and horizontal in mutual friction creates a vibrant cross scintillates and motion originates. When the vertical assumes the horizontal, pralaya supervenes. Evolution is the movement of the horizontal to upright positiveness. In the secret of direction lies the hidden wisdoms in the doctrine of absorption, lies the healing faculty in the point becoming the line, and the line becoming the cross is evolution. In the cross, swinging to the horizontal, lies salvation and pralayic peace.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any comments up to this point before we go into a animation?
Yes. Heidi says, I guess I meant the grounding of these energies. Oops, hold on a minute. Let me get this bigger. Bringing about the universal mind entering into humanity. It is so beautiful.
Yes. Thank you, Heidi. Excellent. I love that word scintillate because it's so descriptive of something you almost have to see visually before you can fully imagine it. And the exception may be with this group because I think this group is scintillating, and therefore the individuals have to be scintillating to add their quota of this scintillating light. Okay, so what you see now again is the mutable cross, and this is taken from another commentary, but it's going to be used in a slightly different context. And you'll note that the four appendages of this mutable cross have what I've attempted to portray as the tree of life. And we won't go into that, but anyone who's studied white magic, alchemy, Gnosticism understands that the tree of life is a very powerful metaphor and symbol of the path. When you study in the Kabbalah, you realize you have these paths of ascent and descent, as well as the chakra centers of Hinduism, Buddhism, and many, many other traditions. So I want the group to now put their scintillating hat on because this is a very rhythmic presentation of this cross, and it really you'll see it in the very center scintillating and beginning to rotate. It becomes mobile. So with that, take a deep breath, relax. Excellent. This is an illustration, sort of spherically, of the idea of a point within a circle. Only this is a bright point of white light in a spherical, in a sphere, which of course is spherical, depending, no matter which way you look, it's a circle. And the monad, we often think that we're disciplining and meditating and studying to work our way back to some supreme recognition. And this is true, the monad. However, it is equally true that the monad, which brought us into incarnation, is always trying to contact us. And how that happens, and this is how this animation is constructed. First, it's sort of linear. Then at the very center, you see this little drop, almost like a drop of water in a still pond. And that one little drop is like the monad. It's our connection with the monad. But as we do our meditations and service and study, that drop expands and it becomes more like a wave, and it undulates and it passes down through the soul body, and it stimulates the soul body to do the same thing it's doing, only on a lesser scale, to start this ripple effect, this scintillating ripple effect, in which it finally passes down to the personality, which becomes integrated by this spherical light, which is really what the egoic lotus is. We break it down into its different petals to understand different levels of transition and whatever. But the egoic lotus, DK has indicated, is a vortex, but it's a vortex that's a part of a sphere. So hopefully this has demonstrated a sense of that when we get some of that wave of the monad. That's what is waking us up. Yes, it comes through the soul, and then it comes through the integrated personality. That's called evocation. The invocation is, I'm going to respond back to that. I'm not going to passively sit here. I'm going to say, okay, I have a monad that's first ray, that's red. I have a soul ray, it's second ray, it's blue. I have a personality ray that's green. And their particular notes, you can, through your invocation, send back, swell. That's the key word that the Tibetan uses. You swell that thread, which is technically the Antakarana. Yes, there are 3 different threads. They relate to different principles, but it's basically all done through vortices and spheres. Okay, are there any questions before we proceed?
There's a
Or any
number of
comments?
there's a number of comments here, and I'm going to read 3 of them together. Okay.
Excellent.
Jessica said, "May I ask what is pralaya?" And then Diana said, "Pralaya is the withdrawal of the life from out of the etheric vehicle." And that the quote, it was from Esoteric Healing, page 417. And then Maria says, um, in Hindu eschatology, pralaya refers to the dissolution or destruction of the manifested universe at the end of a kalpa, a cosmic cycle. It signifies a period um, of reabsorption where everything returns to a state of unmanifested potential.
Those are all excellent comments. And to slightly add to that, we have in many spiritual traditions what is called the great out-breath and the great in-breath. Manvantari, which is manifestation, and pralaya, which is the return back. In other words, deity. And some may argue there's just one absolute pralaya where everything is absorbed, but there may be relative pralayas that affect individual people, groups, planets, solo logoi, and then ultimately all the universes and all that is absorbed into that one point. And when deity outbreathes, when your monad outbreathes, what it does is it creates this descending line that I just earlier described. It throws out these threads that also are spherical. And as they descend, they awaken the lower energies to their higher calling. And when these lower energies, like the human personality, respond to that, they're drawn back up through the Antakarana bridge, and this is what is called initiation, until they reach a point of complete and absolute abstraction, or what the Buddhists call the unborn, the uncreated, total stillness. There's no movement, and yet that's not to be confused that, well, here we are at a loss of words. I'm trying to describe something that one can only allude to, but I think the statements made by the participants here has summed it up beautifully. Any other comments on this video?
Yes, we have a number of comments that I would like to read, but I just want to say, Barbara, hold on a minute. I do see your hand. Okay. Um, Diana says, I am at, hold on, I gotta fix my. Diana says that I imagine the point at the center as the center of a vortice. Vortice.
Vortice, yes,
Yeah, that.
absolutely.
Imagining the journey from the periphery, the cone to its center, source of higher energy emission, or sea of fire.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Diana.
Okay, and also there was a request to me that asked if during the animations, if no one would please post anything at that time because it distracts the people who are working through a meditation in the uh, with the animation.
Michael, if you're still here, can you make that small change? Or BL?
Well,
I,
I don't. I mean, I could do that every time you start one. I could stop the chat and then open it back up again. Is that what you're asking?
yes,
Okay, all
because
right, all right.
yeah, if it's not too much trouble.
No, I just have to remember to do it, and at my age, memory's a fleeting thing. Okay,
Yeah,
Heidi says you have taken these teachings and developed beautiful imagery as we take it in one can give it back to life itself. It's so beautiful what is being shared here with this group. I humbly recognize what is being shared, bringing blessings to the whole life.
that's so beautiful, so poetic, and so esoteric at the same time. You know, when you are scintillated, if I may take a few liberties here, you will be humbled because the light of the soul, when it scintillates you, the light of the monad, when it scintillates you, the personality, although still important and still being retained as a serving agent in the world, it just is blown away. And this is, to me, sort of a modern adaptation of scintillate is to get blown away by something new and dynamic and so sweet, so beautiful, so new. We've all become prostituted by over familiarity, and we need, and I apologize for the repetition, to go back to when we first came into incarnation, not to lose the wisdom accrued, but to be able to see out of those dark glasses that were put upon us unknowingly by even sometimes the most loving people who had our best interests in heart. Yeah, you have to be scintillated is to be broken up into many sparks, and yet you are all of those simultaneously. And you are the flame. You are the monadic flame. Okay, excellent. Any additional comments?
Yes, we still have a number, and Barbara, I'm going to call on you in just two readings, okay? So Greg, he says, I wonder where we go between lives while we are consciously or unconsciously focused in the soul center, determining or exploring the lessons according to our monad and soul ray focus.
Yes, I think you've answered that question. In fact, a good question always inherently has the answer because it's already halfway there. No, that's good, Greg. I would simply add, it depends on your tradition, whether you have studied the Tibetan Book of the Dead or you've studied the Egyptian manuals for death and dying. And every religious system in its esoteric form goes into the idea of where do we go when we check out. Okay, yes, we all agree we're not going to die, but where do we actually go? And the Buddhists have written, in my opinion, and I'd love to start a class on this because it's so fascinating, with their, uh, it's called the Bardo Thodol, or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is really a book about the living. It's sort of an interesting twist on language here. And they claim that you go, when you pass out of incarnation, to where you're most comfortable, where your thoughts, where your emotions, where your aspirations were prior to checking out. You don't go to some foreign country, uh, symbolically speaking. You go to where you can pick up where you left off in this lifetime and then advance forward till you reincarnate back in with all that additional wisdom accrued. Yeah, the Buddhists say that your last thoughts, your last emotions, your last aspirations are very important when you check out. And that's why doing a yogi death is the highest thing that any of us can do, which is you get to a certain age and let's say your body's disintegrating and the soul is really pressing itself on you powerfully and you're more out of incarnation than in incarnation. You, to quote the Tibetans, you kick the body. You throw the body aside like an old pair of sandals or slippers that are no longer needed. And that is the ultimate passage for the disciple, the yogi's death, which is not death at all because they've already died to the greatness within before the physical is overwhelmed by the lower elemental life that dissolve it back into its constituent parts. It's all laid out in the Tibetans' esoteric healing in great detail if you ever get a chance to study with that esoteric group. I've forgotten her name, but she does wonderful work. Does anybody participate in that?
Is that Nicole?
Yes, yes,
This,
that is, and there are other groups, but that's the one
right,
that
right.
comes to mind, doing wonderful work in dealing with those kinds of questions. Okay, one more question.
Yeah, let me just read what Michael Stacy has said, and then Barbara's had her hand up waiting
Okay,
patiently. So,
Michael.
Michael says, in reference to Greg's comment, these teachings discuss a state called Devachan, which is not a location. The life of which we are in reality undergoes a period of rest and assimilation of the good which we achieved in our prior incarnation.
Yes, excellent. Devachan is a very, very high place, and you go into that during incarnations, passing incarnations as you're prepared as an evolving initiate to go into one day full-blown pralaya. But that might be quite a few incarnations away. Okay, excellent.
Uh, Barbara, go ahead, please.
Yes, just recently, there has been a series of pictures of black holes that look very much like this patterning. So, for the first time, astronomers have been able to formulate a picture of what the black holes at the center of every galaxy look like. And the patterning and even the coloring is very much the same. So this seems to be a larger pattern for creation in the cosmos that um, a star implodes and all the information comes to a single point in a black hole, and then starts to pulsate out. So I think that a question for scientists, and a question for us is, what is this central creative force? It will be poetic in some way. But I think that there needs to be some expansive love that just can no longer be contained. That's in that central place.
That's a beautiful outline. And I think that black holes are the passageway between the material plane and the spiritual. And the idea of something disappearing into a black hole and then it's lost forever, gobbled up, so to speak, is ridiculous. And occultly speaking, it's simply the setup so that something can undergo initiation. And we're talking large, although some people claim that there's a black hole at the center of every atom. It's not just these huge constellations and star systems. And it reappears on another level. And what level would that be? It would be the etheric. And then the etheric plane has Laya points. That's what it's called technically. And what is a Laya point? It's a point where everything on that level that's come together collectively and grown abstracts, disintegrates, and reappears on another level. And according to the Tibetan, the study of Laya Yoga was abused during the time of Atlantis, and therefore all the teachings on that subject were they were withdrawn is probably the best word, because people were using the power of the center of the chakras, and there's because the first ray works through the seventh ray. And this deep mystery, because you'd think, well, the seventh ray would be so far away from the first ray, how could the two work together? They have an intimate relationship. And when that power comes down through the etheric, it has to have an opening. It has to push aside the constricting material so that it can make its imprint, it's give birth to new life, whatever. But anyway, yes, I can see this in the symbolism here, especially with the black and the image up on the screen, with the circular, the red, the orange, the yellow, has all really beautiful colors. And you'll note that the revolution of the mutable cross in the center revolves clockwise. That's because it's about personality integration, and that's how the energies flow. Basically, when you're dealing with different energies and forces, when you reach the fixed cross, astrologically anyway, the soul is so powerful. What it does is cause a crisis in the life of the disciple, and the energies now rotate counterclockwise. And BL, if you have anything you want to add to that, since you're the astrologer, please do.
Yes, the point I would like to make about that is when you look at your natal chart, you can see that the signs go Aries, Taurus, Gemini in a counterclockwise motion. All right. So when we're talking about on the mutable cross, we're moving clockwise. What that means is that we learn about having to be a savior in Pisces and having to be a world server in Aquarius and having to reach that mountaintop in Capricorn before we've learned all of the lessons that give us the tools we need to do that. And once we've switched and turned the crosses, then we begin to go through the signs in the proper order, learning the lessons that we need. And at this point, it's the higher lessons from Aries that take us to Taurus, yet so forth, so that by the time we get around to Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, we can be those, those world servers, the world saviors. The other point is this is the transition between the mutable cross and the fixed cross is a very it's turmoil because basically the two crosses are turning in on each other. We still have enough of that personality on the mutable cross that hampers the soul on the fixed cross as it's trying to gain its expression. So I hope that's fairly clear.
Anyone else like to make any comments?
We still have a number of comments in the chat.
let's move along.
Okay, okay.
Thank you. Okay. Each center demonstrates one particular type of cross. In the whirling of the force through the vortex, which whirlings forms the petals of the lotus. Now that one statement alone is really very radical and very revolutionary, because it explains that, and again, this is a repeat, but this is so important to recapitulate, that the petals of the egoic lotus or any of the centers, they are a vortex. And when this vortex is slowed down sufficiently, you begin to see the petal formation. It will be observed that certain petals predominantly stand out, and each center demonstrates one particular type of cross, with the exception of the two head centers, which are the synthesis of the lower crosses. The four-armed cross of the third logos, which is the mutable cross, is found at the base of the spine, and the cross of the fourth human hierarchy in the heart. So this is very, very interesting, because Blavatsky pointed out in The Secret Doctrine that when you become a server, you begin to stimulate the heart center, and the heart center, when it is highly developed enough, it sends an impulse to the base of the spine, which is controlled by ray 1, ray 7, and ray 4. And so the four-armed cross found at the base of the spine has a relationship to the human heart. And this is when the Kundalini lawfully and legitimately rises up the spine, not because of special breathing exercises or drugs or things like that, but because you have opened your heart to the pain of the planet and so many of the people who inhabit it. And so even though some will say, no, meditation is more important, study is more important, they all have to be equally balanced, those three different characteristics, those three different approaches. And never underestimate the power of service and how it will affect the human heart. Okay, when the sacred word is intoned by the average aspirant, it carries force through all the inner centers to the etheric and causes a definite stimulation of the petals in each center. This stimulation creates a vibratory, especially in the center in which a man meditates, the head or heart, which causes reflex action in the spine and down to the base. This is not in itself sufficient to arouse the Kundalini fire that can only be done in due form, in the right key and subject to certain rules. In other words, the masters have given out these teachings, and as you enter into a more intimate relationship with them, you will find that in the latter stages of that entry, there's six stages of discipleship, and the last one is the entry into the master's heart. And then, and only then, can he or she, if in physical incarnation or out of incarnation, the master can guide you to the next level of discipline or guidance. Okay, so how we see that in the next image, astrologically, And thank you, BL. That was an excellent addition. And astrology is so important, and I understand so little of it. It's just a privilege to have somebody who has been doing it their entire life. Okay, so here you have an expression of the mutable cross, you might say through astrological influences. And you're looking at the same cross. Actually, now that yes, the same cross, only again, it's in motion, but this time it's rotating to the left, indicating that maybe the disciple at this point is just leaving that and starting to enter into the fixed cross. But can you see how the vortex comes down? It creates a sphere, and then from the sphere, another vortex descends. And then when that widens sufficiently, if you look carefully between the Virgo and Sagittarius, you'll see another cone, what DK calls a cone, in which these magnetic energies are distributed from one level to another. So in a way, you're looking at the initiation process like taking it as in its organic state and reducing it to just one flash that you can say, wow. And look at the triangles. Follow these appendages out as they rotate to the left. They're made up of what appears as streams of energy, but when you examine those streams, and I apologize for anybody who's trying to do this on their cell phone because they may not see it. There you have the web of triangles, and why triangles are so important in everybody's development, because the triangles lead you into the vortex, and the vortex into spherical realization, synthesis. And we could actually say, looking at this astrological picture, that the dissipating vortex at the very bottom that's escaping is going down to a lower level on the mutable cross, or up to the fixed, because there's really no up and down. And this is why the sphere is so important to always move into. You don't just look at it, you move into it, because there's no up or down. There's no in or out in its essence. And that's what we need. We need symbols that are organic and alive. Okay, so now we're going to jump to another animation, and we're basically talking about the mutable cross and these 4 points. And keep in mind that DK has said that there's only really 6 astrological signs, that these polar opposites must fuse together and become one potency. And that is another difficult thing to visualize, or to fully comprehend, or to even fully experience. And keep in mind that anything electrical, when it is exposed to something more powerful than itself, something of a higher potency, it can cause that lesser magnetic life to flip, to rotate, and then be overshadowed or fused with that higher electrical vibration. And this is what DK calls repolarization. All initiation is a repolarization from one type of electrical substance to another. So take a deep breath, sit back, relax, and move to the center of this electrical animation that I'm now sharing. anyone would like to share?
Okay, I just opened the chat back up, and
Thank you.
there are several chat messages. Let me see. Um, Heidi says, which is the ability to serve at whatever level one has evolved to.
Yes, that's simple but very profound. If you're a third degree initiate, you can work with other third degree initiates for the benefit of all, but often your field of service will be those taking the second initiation, and those taking the second initiation also can work. I mean, you can work with people way beyond your development, but for energy to be transmitted safely and to be assimilated lawfully, there has to be uh, like a hierarchy, but not hierarchy is a terrible word because it's so abused and it's such a treacherous thing in the everyday world when we look out over what's going on the planet. But a second degree initiate can also be helpful. Uh, it can be helpful to a third degree initiate if you want to look at it in the other direction. But usually the primary area of focus is with other second degree initiates and working with those coming up behind them, first degree initiates, because they're close enough to not to overstimulate them and or B, not sort of, well, there's no such thing as wasted time, but sometimes you have to discriminate where you want to put your energy because you can't put it everywhere at once. Any additional comments on that animation?
Not necessarily on the animation, but
That's all
let me
right.
see. Walter says the supermassive black hole in the center of our galaxy, or the central point of the galactic logos, is located at 27 Sag 12 tropical. That can be an important degree to check in our charts.
Excellent. Thank you, Walter. That's
Um,
go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was going to go to the next one, but
Go right ahead.
Ben says a recent study of the and Heidi, I see your hand. I'll get to it in just a minute. Ben says a recent study of the uneven ratio of rotational direction, clockwise, counterclockwise, of various known scintillating galaxies indicates that our universe exists in a black hole of a larger entity. They think this whole universe of 100 septillion stars is inside a black hole within a larger, oh my God, a number I can't even, way big, zillion uh, twinkling stars inside a hole in another universe, countless greater universes and countless smaller ones. In other words, nested universes to the extreme.
Thank you. Excellent. Black holes. Isn't it Sagittarius something that's a black hole in the middle of our solar galaxy?
Well, that's what Walter was just saying, that there is a black hole in the center of our galaxy that is at 27 Sag
Thank you.
tropical. So,
Thank you.
okay, Heidi, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Duane, for this amazing. I saw that, I've seen this, you've shown this many times before, but this time when I was looking at it, and I actually feel like we're seeing through the group now, it's not just individuals, because what I saw was life moving like back to its source. So I didn't see the polar opposites anymore, but I saw the energies returning to their source. And then, of course, if I went backwards onto that previous one that you showed with the cone, I could say that then it comes back in and it reformulates itself. but then it actually returns back to its source. So it's constantly flowing between the source of creation, which is different probably for many, many moments or lifetimes or however you want to put it. But this other expansion that somebody noticed and spoke about actually shows the infinitude of creation recreating itself. And just I can't put any more words on it, but there's something that's being witnessed actually through this group, and it's beyond words, and I just want to overlight it somehow by just a recognition of something that is beyond words, but it actually is present in this group formation. And I'll leave it there, but I just want to thank everyone for their participation, because there's something that is formulating here, and I'm grateful to be participating at this time.
Thank you, Heidi. And everything you've said is very powerful, very revelatory. And your choice of words is always so right on. This idea of seeing through the group, we can often think of a group as where we pick up information and we exchange ideas and lots of other important work. But the Tibetan has pointed out that the human eye is actually evolving, that we're not just going to receive etheric impressions because one day we wake up and it's happening. Our physical eye is being refined and it is evolving to be able to perceive that which is behind or has always been behind the veil. And when you get into a group of people, to make my main point here, when you have a group of people that are all visualizing a similar symbol or animation, it really does magnify the individual. And this is because of the etheric. We're all connected on the etheric. We may not be living across the street from each other, but we are a part of one composite soul group. And that was expressed so beautiful, Heidi. And I would also add that Michael Robbins would be so proud to hear you stating the idea of infinitude recreating itself, because he had similar metaphors or mantras that were very powerful, and on the surface they sounded contradictory. Infinitude recreating itself. How can the infinite recreate when it's already perfect? Oh, Michael and I used to go around and around with this, and nobody had any answers. But thank you, Heidi. It just brought up MDR's tremendous contribution. Okay, anyone else like to make a comment?
We still have a number of, let me see. Susie says, in regard to the cross and the sphere and the base of the spine center, the astrological symbol for Earth is just that symbol. And
Yes,
is it true that our Earth is considered the base center of our logos?
yes. And what's interesting is that the Earth is a center in the solar logos, and the Earth is the base of the spine center, just as Neptune and Jupiter relate to the heart, and Pluto and Vulcan relate to the will, or yeah, there's a lot of commonality. The Earth, the circle with a mutable cross, or the equal down cross. That's great. Go ahead, BL.
Greg says, I saw only 4 different focuses in circulating animations. Is there a way to make this a 6 polarities focus using the same kind of animating process so that you can depict, just lost it. So you can depict for us, because as expressed, there are actually the 6 polarities, and we're working with in terms of esoteric astrology.
Yes, that really should be done. And in some of my other animations, I do use not just the 4, the equal dom rotating cross, but probably 6 is used even more, but in other contexts, and 8, 10, 12, and variations of that. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Thank you, Greg.
And then Anna says, our essence extends into the realms of the unseen, where energy flows as currents in, excuse me, in an eternal dance winding around and within us. This
Yes.
flow forms a sacred geometric structure, our torus field, an energetic blueprint of our being that bridges our essence with the universe. Greg, can you read that for me, please? I'm having trouble.
Uh, my mom's video is on right now, so she needs to mute.
Okay, how about Michael Stacy? Are you still there, brother?
I can read it now that my mom's muted.
Oh, okay.
So Pramana Sklar, our essence extends into the realms of the unseen, where energy flows as currents in an eternal dance, winding around and within us. This flow forms a sacred geometric structure, our torus field, an energetic blueprint of our being that bridges our essence with the universe. The torus field, like a cosmic antenna, reaches beyond the material. When bliss, I think it's bliss, expands it, we traverse beyond our earthly form, awakening the hidden dimensions within.
Excellent, Anna. That is so wonderfully shared in this eternal dance. And I want to extend my appreciation for all the wonderful posts you make at my Facebook site, The Reappearance of the Christ, and the wonderful one you did recently on the Birkeland currents. Just absolutely riveting, the occult fused with conventional electrical theories of plasma and scientific discoveries. So thank you, Anna. Okay, excellent. Any additional comments before we?
No, I think I got them all at
Okay.
this point. Although Anna says, thank you, Duane.
Excellent, thank you. This is a wonderful quote, and it's from the Agni Yoga series. And the longer I do this important service work, the more parallels I see between Agni Yoga and the works of Blavatsky and Bailey, Rudolf Steiner, Aurobindo, and a host of others. And I thought this one was so apropos as we're coming up for another animation. The incompatibility
Would you like a
between,
reader?
if somebody would like to read, that'd be fine.
Yes, Michael Stacy.
Okay. The incompatibility between spirit and matter compresses itself like a rushing vortex. When the spirit is burdened by contacting imperfection through the shell, it begins a battle which discloses this imperfection. The shells that impede the spirit are like encumbrances obstructing the path. Truly, encumbrances. The cosmic creativity incessantly clears away strivings for darkness. Humanity's chief lack of understanding, lies in this expressed disharmony. When the spirit and the shells which clothe it will be in harmony, humanity will come closer to the cosmic union. Thus, when the striving to the fiery process will be assimilated, a new step will be affirmed. The striving of humanity to the manifestation of imperfection is developed upon the principle of light-mindedness. Speaking of the highest harmony, it is said that cosmos creates upon the principle of unity of life. Therefore, one may attain only through unity. Thus, the infinite summons spirit and matter.
Excellent, Michael. Thank you. This idea of the incompatibility between spirit and matter compresses itself like a rushing vortex. Does anyone remember our last presentation, or was it the one before that, where I showed you an animation of the rays and the planes? The rays were rotating in a circular direction counterclockwise, and the planes were rotating clockwise. And when those two came together, clearly you could see a rushing vortex in the center. And you could also see, to go back to one of the previous slides, where the petals come from. How are they formed? And they're not tangible things, as often many spiritual books indicate. They're states of energy, much like subatomic particles. And it's really hard to pin them down unless you slow them down. So you go from the sphere that has a dual vortex, which is an entry and an exit, and then you have the individual creation of the petals as this vortex recreates itself, as somebody said here, Heidi, it just keeps recreating itself through the law of analogy or the law of correspondence. And the battle discloses the imperfection. Well, you can see that working out in our own individual lives. Where there's a battle, where there's friction, where there's discomfort, it's because of two opposing forces. And thesis and antithesis that when brought together they create what in the Tibetan's teachings he calls the burning ground. Now, there are several interpretations of the burning ground, and we can't possibly cover all of that now, but when matter and spirit come together, it becomes compressed and it is forced into a rushing vortex. And the battle is the discomfort between the electrical elemental force of the involutionary entities of our three lower bodies with the higher vibration and electrical substance of the solar angel on its own plane, and in time the monad that literally destroys the soul. Imagine all these incarnations to develop and perfect the egoic lotus, the solar angel on its high plane, and then even that, like the earlier personality was destroyed by the potency of the soul, the monad now does the same thing to the solar angel. In fact, DK says that these lower elemental substances become fuel for these higher fires. Now that is really a powerful statement. And I would love to have somebody explore that in greater detail, because it just is so powerful that these higher levels when they impact these lower levels, they actually use these lower levels, and when they assimilate them or move through or into them and absorb them, they become more powerful, more lighted, more sounding in their higher existence. That is a whole different way of looking at service, because what it does, and this has got to be taken in the right context, that when you serve, ultimately, when you serve others, you are serving yourself, but not in the way it's constantly, it's understood here in this particular dimension. It's, you're setting up a stage where you're purifying and helping to perfect, which is lower, which in turn has a springboard effect. And DK says that the solar angel loses some of its potency when it takes incarnation through and it creates these lower vehicles. But he also says when the soul withdraws from these three lower vehicles, it now has greater light. That is very, very powerful. It's sort of a paradox, an enigma that I'm still wrestling with. But okay, so cosmic union. I just love the teachings of the Roriches. Okay, so now we're going to do an animation, and the animation is going to, however inadequately, relate to a rushing vortex where spirit and matter compress, collide, and create something new. Because when this spiral, the spiral that you're going to be looking at, it can be looking from above down, where some saving force is trying to lift up some lost soul or lower elemental form of life, or you can look at it as some disciple meditating and sending out this this corkscrew vortical channel that as HPB said, Fohat drills holes in space. When you focus on these animations with the right interior concentration, it's like it's like a blade. It's like a whirlwind that's driving itself, screwing its way up through the ethers to make contact with some higher level. And I apologize for all these footnotes and explanations and added things, because the animation speaks for itself. So take a deep breath, forget everything I said, and just ease into this. Just ease into it. Let it seduce you. Excellent. And I'm going to call for comments in just 1 minute. Imagine you're looking at the 7 rays corkscrewing through space, inner space, up or down the evolutionary ladder, depending on the needs of the time. And you can see that these parallel lines can actually form triangles if you expanded this sufficiently. And if you can imagine, all these striated lines are like subplanes or subplanes of subplanes, and that at the very center is like the piercing will. In the 6 stages of building the Antakarana, which is really the backbone of the Tibetan's teachings when it comes to meditation, the first 3 are intention, visualization, and projection. And intention is setting in your mind, okay, what do you want to do? And I'm really simplifying this because of a lack of time. Formulating mentally what it is you want to do, where you want to go, what you're trying to evolve into. Number 2, visualization. Visualizing that in great detail. Simply creating it mentally is not enough. You have to give it, I'll call, warmth, heat, fire, and the emotions, particularly the higher astral plane, will do that, because the higher astral plane is connected with the soul, contrary to popular belief. And then last but not least, the third phase of building the Antakarana is projection. And that is when the Agni Yoga diverts from many other types of yoga. It invokes the will. First, the will of the personality, later, the will of the soul, and ultimately, the will of the one monadic life. And so whenever you do visualizations, and it doesn't have to be obviously just what I'm presenting here, but things that you're attracted to, without forcing, because that's a personality trait one can easily fall into, but with a steady, sequential interior gaze, project whatever you're trying to do, whatever alignment you're trying to make, whatever healing you're involved in, with the power of your will. Because this 2025 and this idea of the gathering in of the arhats I earlier mentioned will require the development of the will. And that is not an easy thing sometimes for second-rate types, because power has unfortunately been perverted on the material plane by so many different organizations, whether it's the military or the corporation or the politics. Oh my God, it's like the word hierarchy. You don't want to even say it because it conjures up such negativity. But this is the will of the Father working through you embryonically, through the personality, later through the soul, and then direct contact. Okay, any questions or comments about the video? Anybody would like to share?
Oops, sorry. There were a couple of comments just as you were getting ready to start it, and now I see a couple coming in. Okay, Diana says battle and friction, disease from Esoteric Healing Law 1. All disease is the result of inhibited soul life. And Law 6, when the building energies of the soul are active in the body, then there is health, clean interplay, and right activity. When the builders are the lunar lords and those who work under the control of the moon and at the behest of the lower personal self, then you have disease, ill health, and death.
Excellent, Diane. Thank you. I had the good fortune to take a couple of years when we all got whacked with COVID-19 to outline some of the important concepts that DK brings forth around esoteric healing, sort of to give people options. And I wasn't trying to persuade anybody in any direction, but only to try to demonstrate what the master said. And I was really quite blown away how deep and profound esoteric healing is. And again, wrote this book of 325 pages. But one of the things that I got out of the book is that there is no change without discomfort. The test is to know how much to drive yourself without causing too much friction, but at the same time making visible progress. These mountains of new age groups that say, oh, it's all about finding peace, it's all about finding tranquility. Well, yes, obviously, but that true peace of the soul should not be confused with the peace of the personality, which is, I just want to be out of all this conflict with my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my parents or where I work. Don't be disappointed if you feel some discomfort. Note the progress that you're making. And the thing about illness and disease is often karmically when you are recapitulating and you're presented with limitations physically that were developed in previous lifetimes, and you have to work with these diseases. You have to understand what they're trying to teach you. What is lacking in your equipment, as Diana sort of pointed out with slightly different language? What is lacking in your equipment that you need to develop? How can you free yourself from this discomfort and learn the lesson? Not how can I mask it with all kinds of superficial ways that just cover the pain and don't reveal its deeper mystery. That's what I've gotten from Rumi, probably the greatest poet on the planet, that discomfort and pain are not just gratuitously there to screw up your life. They're trying to tell you something. And because we're creatures of form, we try to move away from discomfort. You know, you put your finger on a hot stove, you take it away. But that stove can be a great source of heat for a whole lifetime if you know how to regulate it. And that's what the occult path is. It's regulating different energies and forces and trying to keep them all in balance, because nobody comes in with all 7 rays highly and fully developed. It doesn't happen that way. You come in with strong attributes and propensities, which will be natural inclinations for you, but you have to gently, lovingly, but with the power of your will, push yourself gently into the stream of other ray energies that you may shy away from now, or perhaps did earlier in this incarnation. Okay, any additional comments?
Yes, we have a couple of comments and then I got a couple of hands and I'll get to them in just a minute. But first, I want to say thank you for what you just said, Duane. You remind me of my mother. I think I've told this story before. My mother was metaphysical, and as a teenager, I could have cared less. But I'm here to tell you one of the many lessons that I learned from her was she would always walk around the house muttering, "Dear Lord, help me learn the lesson quickly so I can move on." And that's what that just
Beautiful.
reminded me, what you
That
just
is
said.
so beautiful. So much wisdom in our parents and our grandparents.
Okay, uh, Diana says, Duane, can you prepare for us a dynamic meditation for daily visualization and perhaps depurpose or intention to achieve higher inspiration for the needed service during these chaotic months.
Yes, I can do that. And I could even lead one at maybe our next a group meditation, sort of outlining how that would work. The I wouldn't want anyone to replace the meditation or the program they're now involved in, but I think they could add to it some sections that I would be happy to outline and bring to the group in our next meeting. Thank you, Diane. That's a wonderful invitation I would love to work with. Okay,
And
anyone
then
else?
Michael Crow, he put a link in there for anyone who's interested in the mini programs facilitated by the Moira Federation Esoteric Healing Community. I put a link of some of their YouTube
Yes,
things, but this is
excellent,
I think this is a more current one.
excellent.
Um, And yes, Susie says Nicole has some wonderful webinars via Nakara. Yes, they're also on YouTube, and that was the link I put on YouTube. She's currently presenting webinars in the Diva Kingdom. Healing webinars vary, and all are so pertinent, insightful, and of great help. Okay, hand. Joe, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Recently, I was reading DK saying, can you tell the difference between unity and synthesis? So I've been puzzling over that. You are,
Michael Stacy, where are you? BL, when I need you.
when I look at the picture, I'm getting 4 triangles and they're coming together. And I wanted to say that there is warmth first at the heart, then at the throat, and then a little bit in the head. And I just wanted to share that image.
Excellent, thank you, Joe. Would anybody like to tackle that question? Unity versus synthesis?
I think in terms of one being the beginning, the unity, like group unity and awakening to group response, and the synthesis being a further along the path, a greater melding.
Excellent.
Let me see.
Unity is
Diana,
often, go ahead, Diana.
Diana says unity unites the parts, synthesis fuses them. And Heidi
Oh,
says
that's
coming together as an expansion. Ben says to teach and to tie. And Michael Stacy says unity is created, synthesis exists.
that's a good one, Michael. Thank you. Yes, synthesis exists. It just is that. Well, thank you. Excellent.
And then Jessica's got her hand up.
Okay.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment on the video. You were talking about balance and harmony, and the animation, to me, I liked how it was everything happening all at once, but there was no sense of up or down or in or out or right or left. It was just completely oriented toward the will that you mentioned, the center point. So I liked the synthesis. I felt a sense of synthesis from that.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessica. Yes.
And then we have a couple of more comments on that. Greg says, all 3 aspects of the primary rays of aspect all reflect unity in diversity as described throughout all the fusion techniques that we are developing. Isolated unity, inclusive reason, and presented attributes.
Excellent. Thank you. That's well stated.
And Robin says, I see unity as the state, synthesis as the process.
Okay, excellent. State and process.
And that's all I see for right now.
Excellent. Well, let's move on to the next animation. I'm making up at this presentation for some of the ones I missed, wanted to share because of a lack of time, but I think we're going to be good. The mutable cross. Michael, would you like to read that for us?
Hold on, let me unmute him. There you go.
Okay. The cross of many changes continues with its whirling, carrying crucified thereon the form of a man in whom is found the seed of all illusion. But from the cross whereon he has been slain, even though he knew it not, the man climbs down and feels his way with pain and many tears onto another cross, fixed, a cross of blinding light, of fiery pain, of bitter woe, and yet the cross of liberation. It is a stationary cross, fixed in the heavens and guarded by the angel.
So here we are again with the idea of whirling. Love that word. Now I'm going to share a few crosses. This is one that I did up quite a while back, and it related to one of the formulas for group initiation. I think it was the fourth that the Tibetan talks about listening and hearing on the inner planes. And it's not to be confused with lower psychism, but it's like the whole group is manifesting sound and light. And when you go through initiations, you're presented not just simply with your own soul light, but the soul light, where the individual soul is merged into the group soul. So that to me was a good symbol of the fixed cross. And you have the 12-petaled heart center in the center with the orange and yellow and gold. And it's radiant and it's in a state of movement. Now, this next one is not something I did, but I found it very evocative. You know, the solar angel is not just an egoic lotus floating in mental matter on the high mental plane. Well, it's called the solar angel, and angels have wings, but the wings may not be simply what we see in the bird kingdom. The wings are these spreading auric vibrations that are electrical and like sheaths. They spread out, and when seen in a spherical psychic revelation, they're just glorious. And again, I don't know, the artist is on there somewhere, but it's just breathtaking. Looking at the cross and variations of the fixed cross. And then we'll quickly go to this. In the study of the crosses, the true meaning of their influence will only appear as you begin to think in terms of synthesis or of the relation of the four streams of energy flowing unitedly upon and through any form of divine manifestation. This is by no means an easy thing to do, for the ability to think synthetically is only just beginning to appear in the foremost minds of the race. It can be illustrated and then only analytically, whichever negates synthesis. Oh, I just love that quote. Esoteric astrology, the idea that we have to think synthetically, that these streams of energy, these crosses, are all flowing unitedly through all forms of divine manifestation. And it can be illustrated better now with the use of computer graphics and animations. And we're going to now move into another animation, only it's the one of the fixed cross. Okay, and my little note here said, this next video symbolizes the fixed cross in the culmination of true occult crucifixion that starts at the third initiation and culminates fully at the fourth. Note also the cascading array of triangles, which can be personal, solar, or cosmic in origin.
Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Bhuvasva tatsavitu vareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Bhuvasva tatsavitu vareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya.
Anyone like to make a comment on that last video?
Well, I had the chat disabled, but there were a couple of comments just as you were getting ready to start it.
Okay.
If I can find them. Michael Crow says synthesis is the internal method that allows for the real comprehension of unity. Without the internal synthesis of knowing all as one, the outward unity is often forced exercise or imposed practice, which lacks a holistic cohesion or an inclusive tone.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, you can't impose that which comes according to your merit, according to your standing on the path, according to your service capacity. That was excellent, Michael. Thank you.
And then Catalina says, she's copying the answer DeepSeek provided on unity versus synthesis. In the arcane school, the Alice Bailey tradition, the terms align with the path of spiritual synthesis, where unity reflects the monadic essence, the indivisible divine spark within all life, the foundational one life. Synthesis is the active process of fusing duality, spirit and matter, soul and personality, through discipleship, leading to conscious unification with the whole. So here, unity is the goal, the divine oneness, while synthesis is the method, the alchemy of blending opposites through meditation, service, and hierarchical alignment. The school emphasizes light, love, and power as synthesizing forces. Key sources, The Consciousness of the Atom, and a treatise on white magic.
Excellent definition and share. Thank you so much. Any additional comments?
Yes, Heidi says that last animation appears to illuminate the next possibility for humankind and its higher ability hidden in the mystery of matter, a real marriage between spirit, ray 1, and matter, ray 7.
Beautiful, absolutely. The next stage. That's what we need. We need images, we need commentaries about the next stage. Okay. Now, we're going to do another animation, but I just want to point out with triangles that, and this has been presented many times, it's simply all the major centers and triangles between the first and the fifth initiation according to DK. If you go to page 169, 170, you'll see this is a distillation of that. I just took what he said and made it visual and added some of the colors of the rays and a few other small things. The next animation that we're going to see is a sphere with 3 rotating triangles that as they rotate, they connect with other triangles and a point of light flashes forth. And DK indicates that when 2 or more energies come into each other's vicinity or pass over or fuse together, there's a flash of light, and that is the initiation for that particular energy force. And we have a parallel in our personalities when during meditation or moments of clarity, we get a flash of light and we say, wow, eureka, I see it now, I understand it. Well, that is just an expression of higher points of flashing light, scintillating light. And I think this next one that the whole group has seen again in other contexts. And remember that the upper and most important triangle is the 3 head centers, the ajna, the heart center, or what is called the egoic lotus, which is seated in the highest head center or 1,000-petal lotus. And when you get to like the 6th and 7th initiation, the Alta Major kicks in and some of the other centers, but in a totally different way. So use this as a meditation and you'll see it speeding up. And as you see it speeding up, you can see how triangles in motion eventually, individually and collectively, become the basis for the vortex. So take a deep breath, relax. triangles as connecting bridges between all forms of life, from the highest levels to the lowest. And once again, you see the vortex, and the vortex can be cascading, looking from above down, higher energies for redemptive purposes. And this is Ezekiel's wheel of fire. This is the ladder of ascension up through the clouds that the prophets used to talk about. And reverse it, it can be the descent from the highest head centers, or those three higher head centers working in unison to create the new Agni yogi, the new Agni yogi, which will not just exhibit active intelligence. Doesn't mean you have to be Albert Einstein. You don't have to be Mother Teresa. You have to express your emotions and your heart energy. And at this time, historically, added to that, we all need to develop deeper inroads into the power of the will, because you can be the most beautiful person in the world. You can be so loving and so intelligent. If you don't invoke that will of the Father, you can spin in circles. You can do a lot of good, but once that will is brought into love and intelligence, it reveals the purpose of the Father. Okay, any comments?
We had a couple of comments right before you started that, and I turned everything off. And then,
Okay,
of course, we have to be considerate
yeah,
of time. So
absolutely.
Greg says right before you started the video, and this was the one prior to this one, thought came through regarding the vibrational frequencies involved in the metaphor described in Rule 7 for disciples and initiates regarding the dual chords we are seeking to develop with each of our individual antakaranas as they become centralized in the group antakarana.
Excellent. The dual
And then
chord. Go ahead.
then he goes on to say the dual chords meaning musically or as it related to sound as the three esoteric spiritual tones according to the monadic soul and personality ray identifications.
Yes, absolutely. That's excellent. And that has been one of the main themes of these presentations over the years, not just months. The importance of recognizing your personality ray, its characteristics, the soul ray, and when you're ready, getting a sense of maybe what the monad is attempting to do with you. Okay, good. Anything else?
Yes, Joe says the radiant illustration for me is congruent with the energy of today's full moon.
Oh, yes. Aries, yes. Awesome. Ray 1 and Ray 4. Okay.
And then Heidi says, thank you so much. Blessings of light and love and expressive radiance over this next month. Blessings, the full moon of Libra.
Excellent. Thank you. Susie? Susie's got her hand raised up. You're on, Susie.
I asked you to unmute. Are you not able to do that?
There we go. Can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you. Yes, in line with what you were just speaking of, today's Sabian symbols for the sun and the moon, the full moon today. The symbol for the sun has to do with readjusting how we look at symbols. And
Oh.
and the Sabian symbol for the moon today has to do with window curtains, fresh wind blowing in through the window, and the curtain taking the shape of a cornucopia, which is the vortex. Just wanted to add
Oh, I
that.
love it. That's So perfect. What a acausal synchronicity, as Jung would say. Thank you, Susie. And I think what we're going to do is do one more animation, and then that'll be it because we're over our time. And it's a very short animation. So let's just scoot down. And the few that we miss today, we can do at another time. Okay, here we go, right here. The triplicity of all atomic activity, monad cycles, and occult ignition. Ooh, I just love that, occult ignition. It's like slipping into a Tesla Plaid with 1,000 horsepower. And as soon as you hit that ignition, you are out of the gate. Excuse me for transgressing here for a minute. All these cycles of periodic manifestation are concerned primarily with the appearance or the manifestation of the sparks upon one or other of the three planes in the three worlds, or in some part of the physical body of the planetary logos. The lesser cycles deal with this. The greater turning of the wheel concerns also the appearance or flashing forth of the sparks in the planetary or systemic etheric body, or on the four higher planes of our solar system. We can picture to ourselves the glory of this concept, the pouring of the streams of fiery sparks. They are flashing forth into points of intensified fire as they meet conditions which produce occult ignition. And the constant circulation of the 49 fires constructed of the 60,000 million human monads and the countless streams of deva monads. Fire on every side, a network of fiery rivers of living energy, focal points of intensified brilliancy, and everywhere the sparks. There are a few more remarks to be made about the turning of the various wheels, and we can then take up the consideration of motion and the sheaths. Within all those wheels which we have enumerated are many lesser wheels, wheels all governed by the same laws, actuated by the same three forms of activity, and all in their totality forming one great whole. It will be apparent to all conscientious students that the founders of the symbolic method managed to convey in the symbol of the wheel an idea of the triplicity of all atomic activity. We skipped over a few quotes and animations, but we'll get back to that at another presentation. But the language here is just off the charts. This idea of sparks and occult ignition and flashing forth 60,000 million human monads. Oh my gosh, this is just, as an artist, just blows me away. Now, the last animation that we're going to see has been seen in other contexts, but I want you to sort of, now we're talking like the whole solar system itself and how all these separate composite parts all come together and are simultaneously flashing and scintillating. So this will be our closing animation, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you coming together to create this dynamic. This is us, the group. There is no leadership here except for the truth and for the wisdom that we can all distill from each other. So thank you so much. Take a deep breath and scintillate. Thank you so much, BL and Michael, for letting us go over with a little extra time. And I just wanted to share a little mantra that the Tibetan gives. It's very short. O sons and daughters of man, who are the sons and daughters of God, go forth and let your light shine. Thank you all. Love you.
Thank you, Duane. Okay, so the next Awakening the Higher Mind webinar is going to be on the 24th of May. That's because of the conference. It was moved later in the month than it normally would be, and it'll be at 7 p.m. And remember that the exact full moon meditation is today in a little bit. So I'm sorry. 10:40 p.m. UTC. What time is that in real life? I can't tell anymore. But anyway, thank you everybody for attending. We'll get this up with the little animations and with the chat. And if I miss
Yes,
anybody's
'cause
chat, I'm really sorry.
thank you.
Yes, and we hope to see as many of you as possible in person at the conference next month. So goodbye, everybody. Thank you again, Duane.
Bye. Thank you.